The lesson today is in drawing ellipses, and the world is full of ellipses. There's bowls and vases and plates, and sometimes it feels like everything is either made out of an ellipse, a sphere, or a rectangular solid, which turns out to be true. So an ellipse is, first of all, it's not an oval. An oval is symmetrical. An ellipse is actually a round plane, like a plate. The blue tape indicates the center of the plate. And you'll see that as I turn it, it's foreshortened, meaning that you see more of it in the foreground and less in the background as it moves around until as it becomes eye level, it's a very thin, maybe even just a line. This is a diagrammatic illustration of what I just showed you with the plate. You can see that at eye level, you've got just almost a line. As it moves either above or below eye level, it becomes more and more rounded until as you're looking either straight up at it or straight down, it becomes a circle again. It's complicated to see foreshortening when it comes to an ellipse, and this is a good illustration to understand how to make an ellipse sit on a flat plane in perspective. As I said, the world, as you well know, is full of ellipses when you start to look at it. This is a diagram of lots of different things that you would see in a measuring cup, a bucket, a lampshade. And you can see the way that lines can be parallel, like in this kind of barbell shape up above, or they'll be angled, like in the measuring cup. And finally, we have the shape of a cone, which has an ellipse on one side, and it tapers until it becomes a point. This is very useful to understand the way that the midpoint of the ellipse hits the top of the point in a way that is consistent with what plane it's lying on. So now we're going to make our own setup, just using three simple objects: a plate, which is the furthest down on the planes that we're looking down on it. Then we have a bowl, so we're seeing a little less of the ellipse, it's flatter. And then we get to the top of the paper towel, which is still an ellipse. We can see it is not a flat point, but look how much thinner it is as a shape. All right, now I just want to show you quickly how you can make a visual aid that will help you see ellipses. And that is whatever object you have in your still life, you're going to trace it on a piece of paper. You're then going to draw a square around it, and you're going to draw a formation point from point and bifurcate the middle. And this will represent your ellipse that you can lay on your still life. Okay, now we're going back to the original setup, and I've made some round paper shapes for each one of these planes, and I put it in place, and it helps me see it. It's not so much it's the only guide, it's an assist in a way to looking. So here I am working. Sorry that the top part of the drawing got cut off. I have a new camera, I didn't anticipate that. But what you can really see is how many different ways I'm measuring it. I understand that the ellipses fall within planes. I'm looking at the axial lines. I'm measuring from one thing to another. And of course, I'm looking and trying and erasing and changing as I move forward. The other thing that I think is worth noting is how I'm erasing. I erase across the form. And what that allows is it helps that form turn, it softens the line, and never make a great big heavy line, because that tends to make things feel very cut out. So here I am continuing to move things around and giving a little lip to that bowl. It's a little still lopsided. I'm going to have to work on that. I'm looking to see what one form connects to another, so the bottom of the paper towel is actually overlapping the plate, but I've drawn it through so that I can see it in a more fluid way. And here it is important to find like where the middle of that plate is. And as I'm beginning to work on it, eventually I'll see it in relationship to the bottom of the bowl. and the bottom of the bowl will actually be kind of at the midpoint of the plate. And once I find that, then I understand a lot more about how things are foreshortened. There it is, the midpoint, and you can see that there's much more in the front than in the back. But I'm still having to adjust. And so drawing was really, you can't think that because you don't get it the first or the second or the fifth time that something is wrong. That's what drawing is. It's a complicated process where you're trying to get these relatively simple forms in a kind of geometry that makes sense together. Here's the finished drawing, and I think that it's very clear about how it deals with ellipses. But the thing about the world is that it's full of things that are elliptical, but they're not as obvious as a plate. So I did this setup and I did a drawing of it, and it's not as obvious, so there's lots of ellipses. In fact, almost everything is already an ellipse. Here's the drawing, and you can see some things are clearly elliptical, but basically the way I drew it is by thinking of everything as an ellipse. The flowers, the ice cream cone, all of these shapes go around and back into space. So one of the elements in the still life was this little styrofoam flower. In order to make it, I saw the perspective. I developed it as a kind of rectangular solid, and then I found an ellipse on the top, which then became the petals of the flower. The last thing that I want to say is make still lives that are fun for you to draw. I had a lot more fun drawing this than the 3 ellipses with the bowls. So enjoy it, and it just takes a lot of practice and work. Don't get discouraged.